Ever had me teach leadership? You know that my heart cringes not just for our world today, but particularly for tomorrow. My passion for raising authentic and visionary leaders is undeniable in all that I do. I remember 2 years ago when I first spoke about the concept of my book, The Leadership Guardian, with one of my mentors. She asked, "What do you want people to feel after reading the book?" My answer was very clear. I want the readers to be sober, become more aware of their awesomeness, and be ignited for 360 degrees transformation in every area of their life. The reviews from the independent readers of the Leadership Guardian has been overwhelming. The Leadership Guardian is truly a transformational movement for those who are tired of mediocrity and are ready to lead a 360-degree transformation in their lives. While I cannot wait for this book to grace your shelf, I most importantly cannot wait for the Leadership Guardian to grace your heart. Let me accompany today.
Hello, super leaders. Thank you for joining us again on Leadership Chat with Top Business Leaders. My name is Kemi Ogunkoya. I am a leadership development strategist, a management consultant, and author. And I am also the founder of Reli's Works and Leader X, the author of the Leadership Guardian. And I equip business leaders to develop the right competence for their leadership roles so that they can perform effectively in their current roles and also seamlessly take on higher positions. And it is absolutely nice to have you here once again on another season of the Leadership Chat with Top Business Leaders. And the Leadership Chat with Top Business Leaders is a seasonal leadership show that helps leaders develop their leadership skills and help them accelerate their leadership competence. And every episode, I bring to you top leaders with stories that inspire, principles that catalyze, and strategies that will transform your life and business forever. And today I have with me another special guest. His name is Oluwatomi Solanke. And Oluwatomi Solanke is the founder and CEO of Trove Finance. Trove Finance is a mobile application that allows Africans own fractions of stock of US companies. And Oluwatomi has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Guys, get ready, right? He is a 2021 EcoBank FinTech Fellow, as well as a Leap Africa 2018 Social Innovator. Oluwatomi has a decade's worth of experience in building, growing, grooming, and advising technology startups. Additionally, he volunteers for the Red Cross and Lagos Food Bank. Furthermore, Oluwatomi mentors founders that are going through the Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Program. And he is also a mentor with the Founder Institute, the world's largest startup incubator program. Guys, get ready because today we will be talking about eyes on the ball, staying on course and driving leadership in an evolving world. And guys, welcome with me our amazing speaker today, our wonderful guest, Tomi Oluwatomi Solanke. Hi, Tomi. It is so good to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And, great resume, great profile. And, today we're just going to be talking about eyes on the ball, right? We're going to talk about, those leadership principles that have helped you stay grounded and have helped you, just stay true to the vision. So yes, we live in a peculiar world, and the world has been characterized as a VUCA world, highly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it seems like a lot of leaders, business leaders, professional leaders are being pulled in so many directions, right? I'd like you to help us give some context to this. So, how are you able to stay grounded as a leader in the midst of all this noise, right? How are you able to still keep your eyes on the vision of Trove Finance?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is, you know, I just if we don't do it, like nobody would do it, right? And focus for me is, comes from a bunch of things, right? One is from the team. The second is also from the product, and the people or customers or the users that we serve. And it's on both sides. I think one thing that keeps me up at night and keeps me focused on hitting KPIs and hitting the goals and continuing to forge forward, is, first of all, I hate to lose. I hate anything that makes me feel like any sense of being a disappointment, or I set out to achieve something and I didn't achieve it. um and so losing is one of the things that me I hate primarily. Second thing is like, and that extends to the team. The team is like a core driver. These are people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into pushing the vision forward, pushing the product forward. And I also hate to want to disappoint them, right? And so every day that also drives the decisions I make, and how I react to certain things, right? So the key, the team, or the composition of the team, um, and my connection towards the team is a core driver. And the second thing is also like the customers that we serve, right? There is a lot of value that the customers derive from using the product or interacting with us as a business. And taking that value away for me is also, um, it's going to be very disastrous or sad. Not just for me as a founder or as a business owner, but for people that have built a whole life around the service, right? So if you say, um, there is some issues affecting you, or you have some personal issues, and that cascades into product, that has a ripple effect on a lot of things that, whether it's the well-being of people, whether it's and the well-being, whether it's emotional, psychological, financial. So it's it disrupts a lot of things, right? So those two things on both sides, like the making sure we achieve our KPIs, our goals, and build an organization that the employees are proud of, is one core driver for me, and keeps me focused, right? Keeps me staying up at night. And the second thing is just the sheer amount of feedback we've gotten from customers, and how the product is very central to their lives, right? And so those two things keep me focused, and um, just trying to hit these things, these goals, every day, every other day.
Oh, all right, amazing, amazing. So KPIs, and then the people. Now, it's interesting that for quite a number of leaders, they struggle to find that balance, if there is any balance, right? And the intricate balance I talk about is having to identify where we are in a place, in a way where we're able to achieve the KPIs, and then we're also able to, consider. So you talk about the place of consideration of the mental health of the people. You talk about eyes on the customer, on value, on the vision. How exactly are you able to find this balance, right? Because for some, some of the experiences are around leaders who may get so focused on the KPIs and then lose sight of the people, right? Or some who feel that they're paying so much attention to the people, and then they're not able to hit the number. So how are you able to, stay focused and be able to achieve that level of balance where, your eyes are on the KPI, you're able to achieve great results of that without necessarily losing sight on, the people in terms of their well-being, mental, psychological, emotional, and then financial.
Yeah, so I think the core thing is, um what's the big story, right? What's the big vision, right? What are you what do you what are you doing now, but also what are you going to be doing in the next, couple of years, right? And you need people to key into that story. I tell people that, one thing I think for me, um you can't really balance out everything, right? There are certain times where people will feel burnt out for reasons. Like life is very unpredictable, business is very unpredictable. Um, we work in a very regulated, environment where, there are, licenses, regulatory framework can, change overnight. And you just pretty much, first of all, have to be very flexible. But, more than being flexible, I think people have to key into, a bigger vision, or into a bigger goal, or a bigger story, right? People want to associate or work with or use products that are an extension, that, things that are an extension of yourself, right? For employees, they want to work in places where they feel like, utterly satisfied, very satisfied, key into that long-term vision of the company. And those are the key things, for customers, right? How do I identify with this company's core vision, the ideals of the company, or what the company stands for? Is the company innovative enough? Do I like the way the product evolves or has been evolving over time? So I think at the end of the day, it's just perception of what you are today, and what you would be tomorrow, whether it's on the employee level or on the customer level, right? So I think ultimately for me, like, there is no silver bullet, to managing, all of these things. I think what we've just tried to do is communicate things very clearly, articulate whatever goals that we have, or whatever, pain points, or problems that we're solving for people, articulate these things extremely clearly, right? And people key into that regardless of how volatile things may seem, or how difficult things may seem. And it's on both sides. I've seen customers that will stick with you regardless of how tricky things might be, as a product or as a business. And on the employee side, I've seen employees that will stick with you if they genuinely believe in, what you're, trying to do as a business. So I don't know that there's a silver bullet or there's a way of balancing out everything.
Okay.
Um, but that has been, um, for me, the way of me balancing out things for myself psychologically, and also for the team, and for customers as well. That has been the only way for them to stay with us through all of the turmoil, or all of the volatility that usually is life, right? And it's very, these are things that you cannot really avoid.
Mm, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Oluwatomi. So you talk about the fact that you're constantly, evolving the product, and interestingly, we're also in an evolving, evolving world right now. What kind of mindset exactly is required to stay in that place of evolution as a leader?
um I think a couple of things stand out to me, right? I think first thing is, I think critical thinking, right, is very important. You just always have to question what you know, um, question what you hear, and think about things on a deeper level, right? Um, I think another thing is, you need to be open to learning, right? And I call that continued learning, right? You need to be able, or open to absorbing new information, and not just absorbing that information, right? Also using that information to make your life a little more efficient, make your business a little more efficient, make your company more product efficient, to make your staff more productive. I think another thing that has that really strikes out to me is also effective listening, right? As executives in companies, we always feel like our thoughts are supreme, right? A lot of people feel like they can do no wrong, but sometimes, or a lot of times, the most life-changing ideas, the things that actually tip the scale a lot of times, come when you least expect it. Sometimes come from people that you don't expect it from, um, and so, like, that is another key thing for me. And I think lastly, I would say, I think delegation too, as well. You need to be able to know what you are good at, what you are not good at, and delegate appropriately. Um, because burnout is a thing, right?
Yeah.
No matter how smart you think you are, you can't do everything yourself, right? So you need to be able to build quality people around you and delegate effectively. I think that would help everyone as leaders. I don't think leaders are the ones that run around doing everything. I think you stay on the front line, do things like strategy, motivate your team members to do their own bits, and you guys work as a collective to achieving a specific goal. I think those are the things that stand out for me, like off the top of my head.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And, absolutely valid. And so I'm just going to touch on the last point you talking about delegation, right? Because for quite a number of leaders, they struggle. And the struggle usually is around, I don't think the people on my team have built the right competence just yet. I don't trust them to do it just the way that, I will do it. I I'm not sure if they'll be able to replicate what I can do. So getting to that point of comfort to be able to delegate effectively, what exactly would that require from a leader, right? What exactly does it require to get to that point of comfort of delegation? Because quite a number of leaders deal or struggle with effective delegation.
Yeah, so I think delegation starts from hiring, right? Um, I guess you need to also figure out how to hire correctly. And I think people all make the same mistakes. I think it's repeated mistakes over and over again. Like HR makes the same mistakes, executives make the same mistakes. I know processes around hiring are different, but one thing I tell people is, or how I think about this is, I can't delegate to somebody that is not more efficient at a process than myself, right? So I think the first thing is, team building, building a team. So you first of all have to build a team of people, that are better at certain things than you are. I think, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, in your or in your organization, then you set up an organization that in the long term, or maybe even in the short term, is bound to fail. The organization would fail, because what you would see is, you will see yourself going back to clean up the dirty work, or the shoddy job that somebody else has done. Because as as owners, project owners, you have certain expectations in your mind or in your head, right? Or there's a certain quality that you expect because you have a connection to the problem, right? And so when people don't meet that, it becomes very problematic. And so I think the delegation thing starts with hiring. You need to learn how to hire correctly, hire people that are better than you at certain processes. It doesn't have to be a generalist. It doesn't have to be one person that knows everything. Think of the organization. Think of important or the critical moving parts or the moving parts of that organization, right? And pick people that are skilled at certain things, or at solving those critical problems. And then delegation is not going to be an issue. I think ultimately people are supposed to build organizations to the point where you can escape, you can leave the organization for a month or two, or for 3 months, or for 5 months, and the organization won't, cripple or fall, like, things won't just come crashing down like a pack of cards, right? Um, and so those are primarily the key tips. You want to, like I said, you want to build a team of people that are better than yourself. And I think, once you do that, delegating to them would be very easy, or it would be an easier thing to do.
Hmm. All right. So delegating to people who are better than you in certain areas. Now, Tommy, how do we deal in this era where we have shortage of talent, right? Where we have shortage of talent. So
Yeah.
some leaders, founders are even saying, we can't even find the people. We can't even find the right people, right? Let alone figuring out how to even delegate them. We even have shortage of talent. How exactly, are you able to navigate your way through, situations like this? If it's in the way of your business, how are you able to navigate your way through, talent shortages, retention, and some of the HR challenges that we have to deal with?
Yeah. I think it connects back to, I think the problem is not necessarily um, shortage of talent per se. What we call shortage is, the talent that we require to run certain things are gravitating towards, other places, or other, sectors, or, they are transiting from, one place to another, maybe moving from, working with local firms to maybe doing some remote work with like a foreign company, or, migrating from the country to another place. So it's not necessarily shortage in the sense, the way people think about it, like, okay, there are no people. I think the people exist. It's just, the people are moving around, and, you need to change your strategy around how to hold the people, right? um and so, going back to what I said earlier about that vision, or that bigger, goal. People want to identify with things. People want to stay with things, or work with things that, or things that are bigger than themselves, right? Ultimately, having conversations with a lot of people, what they say is, I want to contribute, to this organization. I want to contribute to a bigger goal, right? And it's very critical for you as a leader, right, or, as a project owner, to communicate that very succinctly, but at the same time, in a very passionate and in a very clear way. um I think that way you would, attract a lot more people that would be willing to take a bet on your organization. And I don't think, like, it's money. Money doesn't really retain people as much as we think it is, right? Or I think it does. Like career fulfillment is actually a thing. And if people are not fulfilled with what they're doing, most times they drop off, right? Your attrition rate can go high when people don't feel, passionate about what they do, like what they feel like they're doing is not enjoyable. um People drop off, right? So I think first thing is like to fix, the perception of like what you're trying to build, and, like, telling your story in such a way that, people would key into it, right? And then things like money become, less of a decision maker, or, or like the main thing that tips the scale. The second thing is also like to build capacity within your organization, right? And what I typically, like, a rule of thumb for me is like, what are the critical roles? And, for those critical roles, you hire, like, somebody that's super experienced, but at the same time, you get like a couple of people to understudy that same person, right? So you're building a pipeline for yourself too as well. So in the case where there are issues with staff, you're not shocked, or it doesn't really disrupt any of your activities. And then people also feel, employees will also feel like you're deliberately growing or adding to their lives. All right, they're getting built up. They're learning more things. And they're becoming better people. Right, they might not stick with you for the long haul, but you're creating a steady pipeline for yourself. But outside of creating a steady pipeline for yourself, you're also impacting and making people better versions of themselves, and that also cascades into how employees view the company, and that in turn affects your retention too as well. um yeah, so those are a couple of thoughts of
Mhm.
I have.
So it's pretty much a chain reaction.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that, Oluwatomi. Now, I want us to bring it home now, and I want us to explore your own leadership, transition journey, right? And from the standpoint of your personal leadership journey, to look at what those key, leadership moments were for you that have birthed this, you know, Tomi Solanke that we know today. What are those key lessons that stood out for you on your journey of transition into effective leadership?
Okay, so I guess tying it back to some of the things I said before, I think one thing that stood out to me, or that really I don't know what's the word to use, that really changed the way I saw a lot of things, was there were some points in my life, right, or in the life of the organization, where things were changing rapidly, right? Not because of anything in particular. Like there are lots of things, like you can't control macro, right? And I then in that moment I learned that, okay, you know what, you have to change the way you react to certain things. I used to be a very not, I used to be someone that was not reactive per se. But then I understood that, okay, you know what? You Business is almost like, you're going to war, right? And in war, strategy is important, but outside of strategy, it's also very important for you to be very to think on your feet, right? Because you might go in with one strategy, and then things just change really quickly, and you just have to adapt to that situation, right? So I think one thing I carry around nowadays is like I liken like business to war, right? And one of the things that shaped me or changed me is nowadays I adapt to the ever changing landscape a lot quicker. I wish I used to be that way, much earlier on in the journey. Um, but lessons learned, and I think I've become a better person for for that. But you learn you learn some things the hard way. But it's opened me up to being a lot more malleable, a lot more open-minded, um, and that's just one of the key things that I've learned as a founder, or as as a project owner, is to be very flexible, to be very open-minded, and at the same time to take initiative, right? And taking initiative in the sense that everything is not spelled out in black and white, right? So sometimes you see a problem, you might have to think around the problem. The solution or the answer might not be standing in front of you, right? But then a lot of times, I have to think critically around it. Sometimes it even means exploring or like towing the path of like, gray areas, right? Is there a loophole here that I can exploit, right? To just make sure X happens, right? Um,
Yeah.
so for me, I think, key things, were times where, um, there was like a lot of the landscape really changed, and there are examples, but I don't really want to jump into like all of that. I'll just gloss over it. Things were just changing really quickly, right? And I just had to adapt, right? And not just adapting, right? I also had to take initiative and I had to think around the box. Um, and those things have, those are the things that really shaped me, or that have really shaped me. And in this moment, or now, I'm better for it. Like I said earlier, now I'm, more open-minded. I'm a lot more flexible. I, take initiative a lot more. I think around, problems from a deeper perspective, from a more critical perspective. I actually weigh things, in a very objective manner, right? And before I just said, like I was saying earlier, I used to think things were black and white, but now, there's something in the middle. Maybe there's some things can be gray, right? And I think it really helps, or it's really helped or shape, the person that I have become, today.
Interesting. So being open-minded, and even if you are not open-minded, there's no way you want to learn and build all the other muscles that you talk about, right? So it's really important that we get to that point where we're more open-minded. Now,
Yeah.
can you tell us, because I'm wondering, some of our listeners may be wondering, so I want to do that. I want to be open-minded. I want to be able to think critically, right? How exactly am I able to do that? How exactly do people get to the point where they can be more open-minded? How do they get to that point where they're willing to, build capacity around these areas that you have spoken about? So, in very practical terms now, how exactly do people get to be open-minded? Or develop critical thinking prowess and, those other areas that you have spoken about.
Yeah, there's really no hard and fast routes to all of these things. Um, I think one of the things that I I say is, like, as an entrepreneur, like, you have to, as a business owner or project owner, you have to think on your feet, right? There's this popular saying from Mike Tyson, like, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And so, like, you know, a lot of times you have to just sit down, right? Look at things from a realistic manner, from an objective manner, right? Even if it takes writing it down. I know found, people, project owners, business owners, get very attached, very delusional. They don't really know um what is happening, what is happening around. They're very obsessed about what they're doing, obsessed about their business, and they lose sight of, like, the overall bigger picture. Right. So just, breathe in, breathe out, take a breather, sit down, analyze things very critically. Um, there is really no there's really no there's no one answer, right? You can go online, take courses here and there, but I think ultimately, just sitting you just have to sit down, in the confine of your room, um and think about things from a, honest, realistic perspective, right? Critical thinking, essentially, within the context of, like, business, is you looking at a product, right? Or looking at a problem statement, or whatever it is, or a solution, whatever it is, right? And looking at, different angles to it, right? Thinking about it, having a 360 analysis, of whether it's that product, or, whether it's the problem, or whether it's the, solution, whatever it is, right? And I don't know that there is a way of teaching that or learning that, other than you just actually, sitting down and thinking through. Just take your time, think through it. There's no short routes, there's no fast routes to all of these things. Sit down, think through it. You can take courses, you can experiment with, soft skills like building yourself. You can also, have work. There are people that build communities or clusters, around, improving certain types of soft skills. um, but I think ultimately, like, just bury your head down and just learn. Like, you learn, take it one day at a time. baby steps. And then you can use all these other additional things that I've spoken about, like community, and also learning about things like audio. I wouldn't say audiobooks are the solution 100%, but you could listen to audiobooks, you could listen to videos, you could listen to real life scenarios of how people reacted to certain things, and you can build a community around yourself, of people that are better at doing certain things than yourself. And with time, you become a better version of yourself.
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes.
So I had a little bit of audio challenge, so I had to
Oh,
step out of the studio.
oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Right, so I think I'm back now. Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay, all right, perfect, perfect. Okay, so deliberate, constant investment in self. You've spoken about the fact that people can get materials, audio, attend courses, to be able to develop that level of competence, and it's absolutely spot on, because that journey has to be deliberate.
Yeah.
It has to be deliberate. It has to be intentional, and then the bedrock of that is self awareness, okay, and constantly being on that journey of growth. So you talk about the fact that such business leaders have to get to that point where they can be objective enough with themselves, and as we know, quite a number of people haven't gotten to that point where they can have those honest conversations with themselves, right? The honest conversations to be able to identify growth areas, for example, identify existing gaps. Quite a number of people struggle with that level of objectivity when it comes to themselves. So it is important that they're able to do that, to cross over and build muscles for growth. Wow, thank you so much for that, Oluwatomi. Now, Oluwatomi, if you could give us like 3 tips, right? 3 tips to help people consolidate their leadership skills. 3 tips, right? What would those magic 3 be?
Let me see. I think the first one would be, I personally don't, I've not done it, but I've seen people achieve success with it, is, personal coaches. Um, I've seen people that have, business coaches, and, different types of coaches, depending on, the deficits that they see in their own life, right? Um, some people have, shortcomings, or like, issues with, selling or sales. Some have more issues around, like, what's the word, decisiveness, um, and some other things that, actually, or attributes that actually help you, as a, business owner, or as, a CEO, or as an entrepreneur. So I've seen some people achieve success with, coaches. So I think ultimately, like, if push comes to shove, yeah, maybe, um, get a coach. Number two, I think you need to be open to knowledge, right? I think it's very important to learn every day. I think one of my mantras is, be a better version of yourself every day, right? Every passing day, like, you need to do something that just helps you be a better version of yourself, right? And it could be anything. You learn from failures, you learn from successes, you learn from people around you, their failures, and their successes too as well. So be open to knowledge, right? Read a lot of books, listen to a lot of, and if you're tired, like, if you're lazy, like, you don't like to read physical books, there are tools like Audible, for example, right? You can download some resources, about effective leadership, and listen to them on your drive to work, on your drive to, seeing family members, um, And doing that over time, um, super is super helpful because you're learning from, the mistakes other people made. You're learning, practical steps that you can begin to, take in your own life, right? And so, like the second thing I said, the first thing is get a coach, right? The second thing is knowledge, right? Try to absorb as much knowledge as you can, whether it's through ebooks, whether it's through audiobooks, whether it's through video content. YouTube is a massive resource. You can see, for example, today I had I was in a training session, and they were talking about creating storytelling, right, for impact, right? And people were saying, oh, Barack Obama, how he speaks very fluently, and how Steve Jobs could take a product, and the whole world can buy into that product, to the point that people are not even looking critically at what the product itself does, but they're just so carried away by the person, right? You can watch all of those videos, right? There are certain formats. The funny thing is, there are certain formats to a lot of these speeches, right? Obama, his most famous speech at the DNC wasn't written by Obama primarily, right?
True.
He had a lot of people on the back, right? That, in fact, it was a Harvard professor that worked primarily on that speech, right? He worked with Obama, but there were a couple of people that worked on that speech, right? Um, so the thing is, I go back to say there are formats to this thing, right? There's always a backstory to everybody's, to the great person, right? They learned over time, and like I was saying, like you need to get that knowledge, resources, and we thank God for tech. Pretty easy to get this day and age. So, like I said earlier, tools I recommend like Audible, right, and YouTube. YouTube is you could get like millions of videos around anything that you think is a deficit in your life. And I think the last thing for me would be community, right? Get a strong community, right? There are people that have walked the road that you're walking now. There are people that have done it before. There are people that have done it 2 years before, 5 years before, 10 years before, right? Build a community of people that are experienced at what you don't know, but people that are also experienced at what you know as well, right? Where you guys can also complement each other. Um, and I think like some of your gaps um, can be filled, or you can learn to be better at certain things just by interacting with certain people frequently. So if you're not a very articulate person, or you're not a very vocal person, or you're not a very confident person, there's a lot that comes with having a community and having people that have walked a certain path, but at the same time they face their challenges, they've learned from it, and they're stronger and better people, and they exude a lot of confidence, right? That confidence exudes, right? There's a lot you can learn from being with those people. There's a lot you can learn about being confident, right, from those people. Just hearing the sheer amount of success they've experienced, and the challenges also that they've experienced, you can start to see that, okay, you know what, this road is not a very unfamiliar road. It's not a very it's not like my village people are chasing me, and that's why and then you can suck a lot, you can extract a lot of energy from their own stories, right? And that can be the differentiator, right? You say, oh, if I talk about this thing, right, people, i might I might get shouted down on, I might get, people might react to it in a certain way, and somebody says, oh, you know what, I did XYZ last time, this is how you handle it, right? So there's a lot to learn from community. um so just to recap, the first thing is like get a personal coach. The second thing is just extract as much knowledge as you can from the internet, or tools that are available to you. Audiobooks, like I said, YouTube is a massive resource. And the third thing is community. I think those would be my top three things.
All
That
right. All right.
yeah,
Oluwatomi, it's been a great conversation with you. So much learning, so much insight, and I'm sure that everyone who catches up on this will have so much to take away. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and
yeah.
definitely we look forward to seeing you soon again.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much. All
Thank you.
right. So, guys, it's been a great time of learning and insight. And, I have no doubt that you will turn these insights into action. Understand that the journey of leadership is not a sprint, right? It's a journey, it's a lifelong journey that you have to keep learning, keep on learning, and keep relearning. And I have no doubt that you will keep getting better every day on this journey of growth. So, yes, thank you so much for joining the show. We definitely look forward to having you on the next episode of Leadership Chat with Top Business Leaders. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep getting better every day. Bye.